JJ Meets World is brought to you by Weedman Design. Adam Weedman founded Weedman Design Co. in 2016 on the belief that one-on-one relationships are more important than being a one-stop shop. Adam works with you to get your message across and make you look good to your clients. And let's face it, in this day and age where it's easier than ever to be visible, if you don't look good, you look bad. Adam designed our logo for JJ Meets World. We could not be any happier with it. Let's face it, a guy who can make me look good can make anybody look good. For more information, check out weedmandesign.co. That's Weedman, WIEDMAN design.co.
1, 2, 3, 4. JJ Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure.
Yes, he is.
He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. JJ has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
In 1985, the creators of Sesame Street decided it was time for a full-length movie that would be released in theaters that would be produced around Big Bird. He was the big character at the time, and they did something that Hollywood thought was unthinkable, which is they took the most notable street on the planet, Sesame Street, and they said, screw it. We're not going to film anything on Sesame Street. We're going to take Big Bird out of his element. We're going to make it a road movie. And what they ended up with was this amazing journey that Big Bird goes on. He gets adopted by the Dodo family and moved to Ocean View, Illinois, which was the first time that I ever remember laughing at sort of an inside joke in a movie, because it's Ocean View, Illinois. There's no ocean in Illinois. How are you going to view it from there? And the rest of the movie is Big Bird's journey back to his home and all the people he meets. He meets Waylon Jennings. He gets a chance to hang out with 2 kids on a farm, and that's not weird at all. But he has this amazing just experience where he finds out that there's so much out there other than the street he lives on. And that, folks, is exactly what JJ Meets World is all about. It's about me going out of my comfort zone and meeting new people and finding out about all these amazing, cool things that are happening out there in the world. Now, some of them you probably know all about. Some of them you're probably finding out for the first time ever yourself. But that is exactly what's exciting about it, is we, like Big Bird, are going on a giant journey and may end up in Toadstool, where we have a weird mushroom trip like Big Bird did in the movie. If it's been a while since you've seen it, it's a pretty bizarre sequence where he trips on shrooms at a mushroom festival. So you got to have something in there for the parents, right? So, like, not only Big Bird, but all the other characters that go along. I mean, the Count, you find out the Count has his own car. He's one of the only Muppets who has his own vehicle. But like Bob stayed back. That's right. Why did Bob stay back? What a wiener. But it's going to be a really good time for us to get to explore all of these neat and interesting things. If there's something that you guys want me to cover on one of these shows, I definitely want you to write into us. You can find us on all sorts of social media. Wait until the end of the podcast. I'll tell you all about where to find us. But since you've already interacted with this first episode, let's tell you what you're about to hear on this thing. So first and foremost, Tucker Lucas is my producer. Tucker's sitting at a microphone. Hello, Tucker.
Hey, JJ, how's it going?
Good. Tucker, thank you very much for pushing me to make this podcast with you. Even though I get to talk most of the time, you are a very important person. You've got buttons over there. There's always cords hanging off. Thank you for what you do.
Well, I finally figured out that the key to success in my life will be to hitch myself to the JJ Gordon bandwagon now that you're a big celebrity and stuff. So
That's right.
I appreciate that you're allowing me to, hold your coattails.
Good. Wash your hands beforehand, please.
Yeah.
One thing that I really was excited about when we were talking about launching this podcast is when you said, well, why don't we just make it about whatever? And sometimes you listen to a podcast and it's a series of things. I listened to one on how to be more interesting that I laugh at. It's not something I take for realsies, but I love the fact that this podcast will have an episode about Burning Man, followed by a teacher talking about his feelings with gun violence in schools. And immediately after that, we'll have somebody who cartoons for Cracked Magazine.
Yeah, I think you got that in reverse order. But,
did I? Okay. So we're starting today with the Cracked Magazine.
We're starting today with the Cracked Magazine guy, with a fantastic, amazing cartoonist. And I want to reiterate something to you, JJ, that this is not a podcast just about whatever. This is a podcast about you meeting, hopefully, every single person on the planet. I mean,
okay, good.
I hope you're okay with that.
Yeah.
I bet down the line you're going to meet a few people that you don't care for. And I'm going to force you to sit across this circular table and talk to them. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I've never met a man named Wade.
Done. I know a couple Wades.
Do you?
All of them bad, but I know a couple.
It's interesting. Sometimes I'll listen to people's names and think, oh, I don't know anybody named Wade. I know plenty of Bruces, a couple Chucks, but no Wades.
You know what I realized the other day? If you have the name Deborah, there's no way that someone can call you by your proper name without sounding like they're angry at you. Like anytime you would hear someone go Deborah, like it's an angry sound, right? If you have a friend named Deb, you call him Deb or Debbie. But if you call him Deborah, you're pretty pissed off at him. I have an aunt Debbie, and I feel bad for her now because I bet that happens.
I've got an aunt Debbie too, and I've never called her Deborah.
Right?
I think it's funny when you look at the name Deborah, it looks like Deborah.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there must be women who prefer it pronounced Deborah.
Well, let's get one on the podcast. We'll talk to her.
We'll get a round table of Debs in here to talk about the correct pronunciation of their name. And how come it's never Deeb? It's always Deb. Deeb?
Don't want to be a Deeb.
No. You don't want to be a Deeb. Speaking of odd names, our first guest on the first episode is Scotch. Noel Anderson is his real name, but people know him by Scotch. He's a radio legend. He's been in the business for 25 years. He's been on a ton of different stations. And what's interesting is I had a chance to host a morning radio program with Scotch for a few years. And so I got to know him personally. Also, he found out I knew how to do drywall. And so I made many, many trips out to his home. And he just completed a beautiful remodel. But what I think is really cool is Scotch is a renaissance man of creativity. He plays music. The opening theme for JJ Meets World, that is a Scotch original. And he told me, here's a funny story about our theme song. He spent like a day writing it, and then he came in to record it and decided, no, this isn't what I want. And he wrote something brand new on the spot. So it was very creative, man.
I remember when we got the file back from him, and I said to you, I didn't realize I wanted this song until I heard this song.
Yeah.
I think you felt the same way about when we received our logo back from Adam Weedman, who's our sponsor right now.
Yeah. And if you look at our logo, here's a little inside baseball. I like how he makes me look like a Vita. Where
or Jesus.
Or Jesus. The sides of the microphone head look like little tiny hands. And those are the little tiny things that I appreciate. When you can look at something for 5 times and then on the 6th try, you get to see something special about it.
Yeah, I've known you since the Final Fantasy movie came out.
Yeah,
which would have been
2002, summer 2002,
something like that. And at no point in our friendship did I ever think that your head looked like a microphone.
Until now.
But now I can't not see it. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at you right now, and all I see is a giant microphone.
Yeah, I've always thought you look like an eggplant.
Yeah, I get that.
Do you?
Yep. Because
it kind of it forms a little tip. I wouldn't call you like a cone head.
Yeah.
But there's like a little tip up there.
Yeah, and I'm purple.
Yeah, that also helps. Hey, what's the deal with the Grimace from McDonald's?
I think he's the same race as Thanos.
Is he really?
I think so. Yeah, I think he was like a probe creature that went out ahead of time.
But his name also means to frown. Mm-hmm. But he's never frowning. He's a happy guy. Mm-hmm. In fact, he's sort of like the Patrick Star, the lovable oaf.
I think that's how you know he's a villain, though, because they'll build a character trait into the name of a character. So that, like a Dr. Doom. Like
the Hamburglar or the even lesser known Ham Murderer. Mm-hmm. Who murders people for their hamburgers.
Yeah.
The Hamburglar, do they still use the Hamburglar?
I eat at McDonald's almost every day, and I don't know the answer to that question.
Do you really?
No, like every other day.
Yeah. What do you have?
It depends on my mood. Sometimes it's a McChicken if my stomach isn't feeling quite up to it. Oftentimes I'm getting sausage breakfasts, sausage biscuit sandwich
so you're
breakfasts.
a breakfast McDonald's
Yeah,
guy.
yeah.
I've noticed I don't go to McDonald's very often, but maybe the last like 3 times I've been there since they've introduced the buttermilk chicken tenders, there's always a sign saying, "Sorry, we're out."
Yeah, I've seen that sign.
And it's like, come on, McDonald's, you finally have a reason for people to go there on a regular basis, and the menu item they don't want. How hard is it to mass produce these things?
Yeah, I mean, like, like they seem to never run out of McRibs.
Right. Because they're just pressing together pig fat. And don't get me wrong, I love the McRib. Like, I think most people talk about McDonald's and have this disdain. I love McDonald's food. In fact, I love most fast food for the most part. I know it's not good for me.
No,
but
that's not why I'm eating it.
Yeah, and if you told me, like, well, their burgers are made with, like 20% sawdust, I was like, I didn't know sawdust could be that tasty.
Yeah.
I'll have another.
Yeah, I mean, is it cutting calories at least? Is that sawdust helping me
That's what I'd hope.
mitigate some risk?
Surely the chemicals in it are good for you.
I mean, you could live a longer life and not eat McDonald's, or you could be happy. Mm-hmm. Those are the two options.
I mean, smiles are always free at McDonald's. Do you think they train the McDonald's staff in things like CPR? And they're like, "This is gonna happen. We know this. Look at our customer base. We just want you to be ready when the time comes, and have all the tools in your arsenal."
Yeah, they know CPR, jujitsu,
Yeah. Here's something.
and accounting.
Here's something honest and true, though, about McDonald's. I read a great story about how McDonald's at one point focused so much on the franchising that the stores began to suffer just the quality of the building. And so McDonald's said, listen, we're going to shutter some stores. We are also going to force our franchisers into doing something very simple, which is make sure that their bathrooms are the nicest bathrooms you can find. And that focus was for people who are traveling on the road. A lot of McDonald's are located really, on and off interstates a lot of times. And so when they put that focus on making sure they had these really clean bathrooms that were accessible, all of a sudden their business started going up and up and up. Huh. And say what you want about big corporations, but they've really got stuff figured out.
When it comes to public restrooms.
Yeah.
Well, my 2 favorite public restrooms in our area, in the Fargo-Moorhead area, are not at corporate headquarters of anything.
Where are they?
One is at the Fargo Theater.
Oh, is it?
You know which one I'm talking about?
With
the frosted glass.
Yeah, and it's got a radiator right in there, so it's always toasty.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a stall, everybody.
And it's made to fit like a wheelchair, so there's a lot of space.
Yeah, I played a lot of Bejeweled when I worked at the Fargo Theater in that bathroom.
And the other bathroom, it's actually the bathrooms at Theater B over in Moorhead.
Oh, yeah?
Because it's got like the hard bolt lock on the inside.
Oh, that's nice.
Like the worst thing, you go into a public restroom, it's a single stall, and the handle is just like the little button that you push in, and it gives you the, like, okay, I'm pretty sure this is locked, but I've seen these handles fail all the time in rundown public restrooms. So I never feel secure with those. But the fact that I can like deadbolt this massive thing in the place, it makes me feel so secure that I could spend a lot of time in the bathrooms at Theater B.
Let me make a suggestion. On 13th Avenue in Fargo, the Holiday Inn just remodeled, but underwent like a 2-year remodeling process. Their bathroom stalls now are all the way to the floor. So you get your own cubby.
That's what it should be.
That is just wonderful. Because from time to time, I hate when I see someone's shoes, and I hate when they can see my shoes, because the last thing you want is for someone to be able to identify you from your shoes and correlate that with a sound you made in the bathroom.
Yeah. You know, we should make a goal for the podcast.
To do a live bathroom show?
Well, no, we should do that as well. But what I'm thinking is we should see who the closest person is to our geographical location that actually has the job of bathroom attendant, where you stand next to the sink and they walk up and you hand them like a towel and some mints and they give you $1. That's a job that you see in movies and TV, but you never really see anywhere. And
I've only seen it once in Las Vegas.
I think I've seen it like once or twice, probably in Vegas. We should find who that dude is.
Yeah.
And bring them in here and make them a star.
That is a great idea.
Let's do it.
Well, we're talking with a gentleman today who I doubt has ever been a bathroom attendant, mainly because he would want to talk too much, and that's the real key of a bathroom attendant is you've got to maintain a certain level of silence.
Here's a towel, sir. Some soap. Would you like me to draw you a doodle?
Yeah. Everything okay in there? So without further ado, let's kick into this podcast. We've got Noel Scotch Anderson, and he's going to tell us all about art and creativity, and his wife Tanya even gets a microphone, which she doesn't normally do. So this is kind of fun and exclusive to us.
Guest appearance by Tanya.
All right, let's do it, kiddos.
JJ Meets World.
My guest today is Noel Scotch Anderson, who happened to bring his better half, Tanya, his wife, as well. So welcome to JJ Meets World.
Thank you. Please call me sir.
Sir, yes, sir. So I had the opportunity to be on a show with Scotch for a couple of years. It was a ton of fun. And, of course, I know Scotch from Fargo Moorhead Radio from all those years back. He's an institution.
Oh, stop it.
When I got to be on a show with him, I found out he's much more than just a guy in between fart jokes and guitar riffs.
You found out he belongs in an institution, you decided, right?
So, Scotch, the thing that interests me the most is art surrounds your whole life, and not just painting pictures. You're an amazing cartoonist. You've been published all over the place in different things. In the last year, you've had issues of Art Riot that have come out, and then you just handed me a copy of the North Dakota Apartment Wrestling Illustrated.
It is a beautiful thing to behold, isn't it?
So
I'm not looking at my wife, but is she rolling her eyes over there right now as you're saying all this? Probably.
Yeah. Well, somebody's got to talk everybody up. Jill does the same thing to me, where she reminds me, like, listen, you're not as great as you think you are.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And before we get this started, so Jill, my better half, was a big fan of yours from way back in the radio days.
So like Scotch and Dewey days? Then?
Yeah.
Okay.
So much so that she and her sister have cassette tapes of your shows from that time. And every now and then she'll be like, hey, ask Scotch if he remembers doing this song. And so I'll go to work and say, Scotch, you remember doing this song? He goes, oh, yeah. And then I'll tell Jill, he remembers that.
So weird to me, but I get it in the same respect, because when I used to listen to Baxter and Justice on the Fox, and I wanted to be in Fargo radio so bad, I would listen to Baxter and Justice, and I would tape record bits that they would do, and then I would call into the show too, and I used to call in and do my Bill Cosby, and they didn't know who I was, but they would air it, and Justice was a pretty good sport about playing along with me. So when I started working there, he knew that I could do the Cosby voice, so then I would get to call in and do stuff on their morning show. God, that was such a thrill.
Well, double down to, I've been invited out to your home several times to watch movies. Scotch puts a big screen up, and you get to watch these outdoor movies next to the campfire. And on the way, every single time, Jill will tell me, I can't believe we get to go to Scotch's house. And I say to her, I'm on that goddamn show too, You live with me. You've seen me naked hundreds of times.
And
is that not
I've
impressive?
been on television. I'm the big banker.
Right.
What was the name of the character?
The Bad Banker.
The Bad Banker.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh, I roll, Mr. Budinsky.
One of my good friends is Chris Hansen from Bob in the Morning.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in elementary school, he was on Y94 with Goat Boy and a few of those others. And I was starstruck over him with about a day. So
Yeah.
Jill should get over it. No offense, Scott, but
absolutely.
Jill should really fucking get over it.
Yeah, right. It's about time.
Yeah.
But so let's dive into who Scotch Anderson is.
Oh, it's a
The
deep
man.
well.
The man.
You've stepped in deeper puddles. Don't worry.
So you're from Hawley, Minnesota originally.
Yep, grew up Holly Nuggets, class of '87.
Now, heck, ooh, and you had a television show at Hawley, right when VHS was becoming a thing, right? And people had camcorders.
So by the time we were juniors and seniors, they had Nugget Notebook, which they would play on the local Hawley public access channel. They would play, I think, two things. They'd play like the Hawley Lutheran Church thing on Sunday morning, and then they would play Nugget Notebook. So I got to host a couple of those. It was more of like if you were in journalism class, you got to be part of Nugget Notebook. So you'd have to do stories on the high school
basketball team and all that. But then we would always do skits because we loved SCTV and Saturday Night Live and Fridays and all that. So we would film skits and try to work those into the show.
You just had a high school reunion, and so they were putting a bunch of these online, and Scotch was showing me a bunch of these. And there's still some pretty funny stuff.
Embarrassing, though, when you're young and you've got that cocksure confidence. You look back and watch it, and you're like, oh, I'm so arrogant. Why did I think I was so cool? And I was just far from cool.
Tucker worked for Randy Long for many years, and it turns out that you and Randy were similar in age, but different schools. And they mentioned Randy in one of the Nugget Notebook episodes because he was on a rival debate team.
Yeah, we were speech nemesis, and he was my rival, and I didn't even know that. After being in a couple of competitions, somebody said you had to look out for that Randy Long. He's really good. I'm like, oh, and apparently he had heard about the new guy from Holly who was competing in creative expression. That was cutthroat competition because that's where you got to be funny. So, when we first met, a couple of those leveled that gaze at each other. And so we'd joke about that over the years, the fact that we were speech rivals. But,
well, look at you.
We've mended the fence.
You've turned out to be a local celebrity, and Randy does Santa photos at the mall. So, Come
on.
That's the way people grow. It's the way people grow.
He's the singing nerd, and he does all sorts of stuff.
Oh, Easter photos at the mall too. If we're gonna be completionists, if he can figure out
Randy,
a way,
if you hear this.
Oh, and Randy knows I love him. He's great. And
we were in a movie together, Randy Long and I.
Really?
Tony Tilton made an epic where we got to play gangsters together, along with Dave Jacobs from the Fox. Yeah.
What was the title of the movie? Do you remember?
It also had Mad Frank was in it.
Del Dvorak?
God, what was it called? Like Golden Memories or something like that. Just about a bunch of old guys that pull a heist. And then
like Going in Style, that Michael Caine movie?
And then these gangsters move in on him. So Randy Long is like the main thug, and then Dave Jacobs and I are like the two toughs, his henchmen, and we kidnap these old men. It's pretty wonderful.
We could do an entire podcast where I'd have nothing but questions for you about making that movie. Just saying.
Oh, yeah, because it had both Mad Frank and Icky Bod were in it.
Oh, interesting. See, so you've been doing a lot of stuff for a long time. So tell me about like the art aspect of your life, because that's a pretty big part.
Started drawing and cartooning when I was young, and I'd get told in study hall, don't you got anything better to do than make them funny pictures, Anderson? And that used to make me so mad because I thought, hey, I'm making art here, So then years later, started getting things published. It was a long and winding road, as Paul McCartney would tell you, but I don't know. How do I get into it?
So let's start with this. So what are you drawing back in the day? Because the only thing I know how to draw is where you take a line and then you do 3 little dips below the line, and then you do a little line and then a big dip and then 3 more dips and more line, and it becomes a dude who's got a long nose looking over the side of a wall.
Oh, the Kilroy was here guy,
yep,
right?
That is the one thing I know how to draw. And Scotch has told me many times.
That's not Ziggy?
It's the Kilroy guy.
It's like Ziggy's cousin is what it is. Scotch told me many times, well, anyone can draw. You just got to practice that. You got to work at it. And that is bullshit, because I have tried for years. I even bought a book, learn how to draw. It's just not a skill set.
But when you're young, when you're a kid and you draw, no matter what you draw, adults will tell you, oh, that looks so good, and let's put that up on the fridge, and everybody compliments you on it. But
not
then
me.
But then you reach an age where they just quit doing it. Hey, look at my picture. And they go, yeah, that's great. But
you're 22 damn years old.
I feel like I was lucky that I had people that still encouraged me, because I look back and I didn't draw anything that great, but I had family and friends that, oh, that's really good. And I must have really fed off that encouragement, because when I would hear that, I got to draw more to impress these people. And then I just became something I was interested in, and underground comics. Once I found underground comics, man, that's all I wanted to draw was comics about smoking dope and boobies and all that.
Were you an R. Crumb fan?
Oh, huge R. Crumb fan. Yeah. In fact, when I started working at Take-Two Video, Rick Stenerson was the first one who said, oh, we got a regular R. Crumb here. I said, who's R. Crumb? You never heard of Robert Crumb? So I went down
Keep on trucking.
Yeah, and I bought this big complete Crumb book, and then I bought all the back issues of all the old comic books from Rip Off Press, and Then I got into Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers by Gilbert Shelton and Zippy the Pinhead and all those different things. And that's all I wanted to do until I discovered that there's absolutely no money in drawing underground comics. I would send things to all these places like Rip-Off
Unless you're like
Press.
Adrian Tomine or something.
Yeah.
You know.
Fantagraphics. I'd send to all them, and they would always send back and say, sorry, industry's in the toilet. There's no money to be had here. But it was when I ended up talking to Bruce David from Hustler magazine, because we had him on the air, and he said, well, submit some comics if you want. And then he ended up publishing me. That Cracked magazine and Hustler are like the two things I got published in. But I owe it all to being in radio, because we interviewed them, and I got a little foot in the door. I think that's what you need, is to get your way in.
Do you remember how many issues of Hustler and how many issues of Crack you ended up being in?
I drew for Hustler for like a decade. There's about 10 years worth of Hustler magazine and then Hustler humor. I drew for both of those, so I got a huge box full of them.
Did they tell you what to draw, or did you get to kind of do whatever you wanted?
No, I would submit ideas to him, because I kind of got on board as the TV satire, movie satire guy like you would have in Mad Magazine. Mm-hmm. So I would look ahead like about 2-3 months as to what movies were coming out. And this is great, because this was the dawn of the internet. You know, before that, I never would have been able to do it. But I would look up and see, okay, this movie's coming out. I think like Iron Man was coming out. So then I'd look for spoilers and things online, and then I'd draw an appropriately filthy parody of it based on that. And then usually they'd say, okay, give me 3 pages or whatever. And they used to pay so good, too.
Well, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So much. You got invited out when Larry Flint was, they did the roast, right? You got to go out there, and so you've actually had a chance to meet Larry Flint in person and have a whole experience.
Illustrating for the magazine, they asked if I wanted to do a drawing for the back of the program, because they're doing a Friars Club roast for Larry Flint. So I drew this caricature of him on the back where he's like screwing a chicken, and he's sitting in the wheelchair and everything, and then all of a sudden I got an invite in the mail to actually go to this Friars Club roast. And I thought, well, there's no way I can go to that. It's way out in Los Angeles. But I was doing the show with Dewey at the time, and he said, well, we should see if the radio station will send us out there. So we talked to, I think it was Mike Waters, who said, well, yeah, you guys can go if I can come with you. So we ended up convincing them that we would do the show from down there and everything. So we flew out to Los Angeles and got to tour the Larry Flint publishing facilities. And then we went to the Friars Club roast, where we met like Anna Nicole Smith, and we met, who else did we see there? Pauly Shore and Eddie Griffin, who I thought was Puff Daddy when I first met him. I said, I'm pretty sure that's Puff Daddy. And Mike Waters is like, yeah, I don't think so. No, it's totally him. And then I find out it's Eddie Griffin.
So, and then Cracked did you have a bunch of stuff in Cracked?
Yeah, that was another thing. Right when they started having like message boards online, I'd go to the Cracked message board, because they just, the guy who published Weekly World News.
Oh, yeah.
The one that has
like
all of the Bat Boy, and I flew in Elvis's UFO, all of those things. He bought the publishing, the rights to Cracked magazine, so he was the new editor, and he started promoting it online, and he'd have these message boards, so I'd go on there all the time. And then he realized I was in radio, so he said, would you like to have us on the air to interview us and give away some copies of the magazine? I said, yep, absolutely. Talked to them, and then I got a call at the radio station from Dick Culpa, and he said, we're looking through some of the old submissions here, and I saw that you'd submitted some work a while back. I said, yeah, it's a long time ago. Well, he goes, do you think you could draw Bill Clinton? I said, I sure could. Well, we're doing this piece, jobs that Bill Clinton can do now that he's going to be out of office. Oh, yeah, send it my way. So I ended up doing a 2-page spread for Cracked magazine. That was, let's see, when would that have been? Like 2000? Probably like 2000 or 2001. So that was huge. And then after that, they just started sending stuff to me, and I was in there probably every other issue.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I got to draw like the Shut Ups one issue, and I got to draw one of those Nanny Dickering interviews, like all those things that I'd read in Cracked as a kid. I got to like do my own version of them in the magazine. It was so cool.
It's always exciting when you have something that you've loved for so long, and then you get to be a part of it.
But then when that well kind of dries up, it's so disappointing, because Dick Culpa's run of the magazine lasted maybe 4 years, and then it ended up becoming, I don't know if you know where Cracked ended up being more like a kind of like a college humor magazine for about an issue or two, and then it was just strictly online. Now all they do is lists like BuzzFeed, Here's the top 10 funniest whatever.
Well, maybe at one point someone will say, I remember the good old days of crack. We should get everyone back in a room together, and we'll
I hope so.
we'll all drink Tab, and we'll come up with a great magazine.
Who is this guy?
That's the guy. That is my impression of the guy who wants to bring crack
got
back.
Android, he's drinking Tab.
And I'm legally blind without my contact lenses. So, magazines. The first time that I ever really got to meet you, I missed the opportunity because you had put the line benders in an art riot since you knew Britta. You were working with Britta. And so we had worked something out, and you had to pick a hard drive up from my house, but I didn't. I obviously had better things to do that day. And so you had to pick it up. And I remember thinking, like, God, I wanted to meet Scotch for a while because I like what he's doing. And how many issues of Art Riot have you guys done?
We're working on the eighth or ninth issue of it now that's going to be coming out in April.
If someone's never seen Art Riot, what's it like?
It's like an underground zine where it's got comics in it, and it's got things about local bands, and there's graffiti artists and tattoo artists and just anything that's kind of underground art in Fargo. We try to put it into the magazine. And then photo funnies, that's the other thing. I used to see those in National Lampoon all the time, and I thought that was so cool that they would have pictures and then they would do like a cartoon comic story with it. So that's one of the first things I wanted to put in that magazine, and putting the line benders in it, that was really a sweet story that you guys came up with. The Baby Benders Detective Agency.
Yeah, we were pretty proud of that.
Photoshopped your heads onto babies.
And I was worried because I was looking at it and I was like, God, this is the shittiest quality. And my Photoshop skills are horrible. I'm like, there's no way this is going to make it. And I was like, oh, this is the nature of that magazine.
Absolutely.
Is it supposed to be a little gritty?
It's a
You're
little
supposed to
cut and
see the
paste.
lines.
I've had a front row seat to JJ's progression in Photoshop. Like once a year, I get, Tugger, I learned how to do a gradient.
Yeah.
Oh, I copied and pasted.
You gotta take pleasure in the
pretty
little
amazing,
things.
yeah. In fact, Scotch has been I've been able to, how do you do one of these? Because obviously you've got some skills when it comes to Photoshop. Well done.
Thanks.
Not all of us can do Photoshop either. We
Much to
can't
my
draw.
wife's chagrin, though, she thinks I should move to InDesign, and I'm very hesitant to switch from Photoshop.
Oh, yeah? Just because you know it so well.
I love Photoshopping. Yeah.
And because he's lame.
So, Art Riot has been out, and it's awesome. I love it. One of my favorite parts of Art Riot are the fake ads that you put in there. Yeah. I think that's fun. That's funny stuff.
Again, that's all from years of reading National Lampoon and Mad Magazine, and Crazy Magazine was one that I used to really like that Marvel put out in the late 70s and early 80s, because it was kind of like Lampoon, but it was more directed at a 12-year-old, and they were just chock full of ads that were, filled with gross people with nuclear mutations and all that, because it was the early 80s, so there was still that Cold War kind of fear. And
that was a big thing back then, wasn't it? Like, sort of, ooh, how are you going to live in the Fallout world?
So it was like Mad, but it wasn't. Mad was still kind of making those vaudeville kind of, old New York man type of jokes, where Crazy was more directed at that kid humor, like Garbage Pail Kids, and they had Obnoxio the Clown was one of the characters. So I used to love that and would draw those types of things. In fact, me and a bunch of friends had a magazine much like Art Riot when we were in school, like 7th, 8th grade, I think, that was called Garbage, and we would all draw comics and then staple it together, and we'd hand it around for everybody to read, and then we'd start on the next issue. And
oh, that's awesome.
That's making me think of a couple things, because I'm a Marvel Comics guy. Because they always had the What If series with Marvel, but then I think they had a What The, which was supposed to be kind of a parody version of that. So it's Wolverine with sporks coming out of his hands.
Yeah, right.
But what it's really making me think of is the thing that I really miss in comics these days. In the older comics in Marvel, they would always have like the bullpen editorial where they'd get letters, and then there'd be like a one-panel comic drawing of like one of their editors, and it was always kind of a grotesque, almost Crumb-like illustration, and they'd be dressed as Spider-Man and be fat and it'd have a one-line joke that probably only they understood.
Marvel had
the
such a
Marvel
great
offices.
sense of humor about themselves.
I miss that little piece to comics these days.
And that they were willing to do something like take a character like Obnoxio the Clown and then have him face off against the X-Men. That was a big Obnoxio the Clown fights the X-Men one issue. But they could do it. They owned the characters.
So we talked about the North Dakota Apartment Wrestling Illustrated, which I've got in front of me. How much are you selling these things for?
Well, it depends on what people are willing to pay for it. I didn't. What
do you want? What do you want to get out of it?
I didn't put a price on the cover because I figured depending upon where I'm at, because the girls who are in it are the Valkyries of the Valley. They're a local burlesque troupe. They're the ones who are doing the wrestling.
And it's all photo. It's photo funnies.
Yep, all done photo funnies and fake articles. JJ's actually in it.
Yeah, that's right. As Scotty Rabidowitz.
Scotty Rabidowitz, a local fight promoter and cat fighting enthusiast.
That's a character that Scotch had me play on our show when we were still on a rock station, who was a guy who would remake classic films
with wrestlers.
Yeah.
See, don't you miss we used to get to do so much crap on the radio. I can't even believe, and there'll probably be another day where we get to do that. But, we would think up a skit, and we could have it done in 10 minutes and have it on the air, and everybody in Fargo would hear it. That was the crap I was doing on a tape recorder with my buddies after school, and here we were just doing it, you and Britta and I in the morning. Oh, we should do this. Quick, go get on the phone and pretend to be this character, and then everybody hears it. No filter, no second guessing it. Just put it on the air, quick.
I love fake names.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite things is when you hear a good fake name. Daryl Butterslide is one of my all-time favorites.
Used that so many times.
Gary and Terry Trumbo, the brothers who have a bunch of stuff in Gackle, North Dakota.
Right.
Poor Gackle was always the butt of the joke for us.
But then Scotty Rabidowitz, he was the fight promoter and cat fight enthusiast. So we did a skit where he was on the show and he was promoting these half-hour versions of movies, because nobody wants to sit through a 2-hour version of in black and white. It's what a snooze fest. Wouldn't you rather see two oiled up broads going at it for a half hour and and it would be Casablanca or West Side Story?
Yep. And
he did musicals, but you don't want your friends to think you're a tutti frutti, so that's why we put these female wrestlers in these movies.
And Scotch would grab Carla, who worked at another station down the hall from us, and she got this real breathy voice.
If you like Debbie Reynolds, you'll love Debbie Doubles
in Swinging in the Rain.
It's Juliet and Juliet, featuring Juliet Jugs. But so we took that character and actually put him in our little wrestling magazine that we did, and JJ's posed wearing these sunglasses, like the aviator sunglasses with a fake mustache. And
I think I've got a turtleneck on too, which always makes me people who wear white turtlenecks, I think are assholes. And so whenever I need to be a total jerk, and then the mustache is the thing that really sets it apart,
Right.
But
so we just did originally we did these little photo funnies then for Art Riot, but once we started using the girls from Valkyries of the Valley to do these wrestling ones, we thought, well, we should do a whole magazine of that, because we'd already shot several of them for the plan of just every issue of Art Riot. We were going to do a little photo funny with them in it, but we started shooting extra stuff. We're going to shoot some more stuff this month. And
I'd love to see an issue where they're wrestling and the landlord's trying to show the apartment like the next possible tenants.
Yeah, there you go. Why not, right? Brought to you by Mark Gold, Property Resources. One thing that I also enjoy is the Sinkhole series that you've done. How many issues of Sinkhole have you done?
3 issues of Sinkhole. And that's a comic I started doing when I was unemployed. Most of these sprung out of being unemployed because I was in radio in Fargo for 20 plus years. And then there was a year where I was fired and had a hell of a time finding another job. So I was just reaching at all these other little projects to start. So we started Art Riot. I started drawing Sinkhole, just as little 3-panel comic strips. And I figured that was something to occupy my time, and I'd post those up online. But then I would get so many of them done, it's package them up, do a comic book of it, start working on the next one.
You've been at countless comic conventions and stuff like that. I noticed that they like to grab you a lot as and panelists. Noel Scotch Anderson.
I got
will
so
be
little
here.
to add because I don't really know anything about the industry. I know what I do as far as self-publishing.
But isn't that's huge nowadays?
Yeah.
You don't have to wait for a Marvel or what was the one that did Demonic Toys?
Full Moon?
That's the one, yeah. You don't have to wait for a company like that to reach out to you to get something published. You can publish something on your own, And you can get out there with the internet. It's even better because you can get it seen by a ton of people. Monetizing it is the
That's
difficult
the tricky part.
Yeah.
So keep your job at Edward Jones and do this for fun until it starts to kick off.
Like this profitable podcast you're doing, right?
Exactly.
We're rolling in podcast money. We're just waiting for that MeUndies money and
Yep.
that.
I'm hoping Wix will allow me to do building your website with Wix is easy.
You always got to find what company has decided to make a massive purchase on podcasts for some reason that year. Wix is everywhere right now, but
Well, then don't forget to add in your sister podcast of the Trigger Warning Fun Time Show.
That's
when
right.
You get signed big. So.
Which I gotta tell you guys, so that was my first foray into podcasting. Was doing a show with Jack Spade and Britta, who goes by Burrito on that one.
Super fan Ozzy and
It's funny, no one has brought that up to me now that I'm on a AM radio station that has a highly respected background.
now my mom listens to you. She's like,
she
I
does.
listen to JJ, and if you were on the radio going, she'd probably not tune in anymore. So
Right, and it's amazing.
we'll leave that for here.
I hear a lot of people who tell me that they miss Scotch, Britta, and I doing a morning show, and that was the most fun I've ever had in a job. Period.
Are they going to let you cut loose a little bit?
No.
No.
Are you kidding me? No. I am filling time between ag
Today,
reports.
sugar beats.
Yeah, exactly.
some of those road reports are pretty entertaining, though. I've heard you out there.
Those morning ones?
ice. Slow down.
I gotta bring a little bit of my personality to
JJ's
it, right?
incorrigible.
And then you've got 5 older people listening to it being like, well, why are they letting him talk right
Would
now?
you ever have dreamt in your life that one day you'd be working with Don Haney and Bonnie Amistadi
No.
and Too Tall Tom Szymanski?
It's
Is
been a
life
dream.
not a crazy ride?
We've been trying to nail Too Tall Tom down for one of these episodes.
Yep.
Because he is a funny guy.
He's a very funny guy, but he's also a pretty shy guy. You know,
Yeah.
he's when he puts on the Too Tall Tom, he's very boisterous and outgoing. And what do you want?
I've got a lot of BS coming from the south this
Yeah.
weekend.
Throw a bowling ball in the garbage can. It's going to be windy out there. But when you get one-on-one with him, he's pretty reserved. You know, quiet guy.
That's how they all are. It's
Exactly.
the boisterous ones that turn out to be the shy guys behind.
That's right.
Except for me. It really has. It's a dream come true. Like when I got a job on the radio, and truth be told, I have my job because of Scotch and Britta. I had subbed in randomly a couple of times on your program with other hosts.
Well, and when we would want to do character call-ins too. I don't know, it might have been Lucy Black or I don't know who it was. It was like, we should get J.J. Gordon. Do you know who he is? He's part of that improv troupe in town. Have him call in, and I think we had to do some like Russian character a couple of times,
Yeah.
and you would call in, and then I knew, God, we got to get him on the show, and it was so great once you and Britta and I
And
started
I had
doing
used
it.
up my 2 accents already, so they didn't even know that they were. I was a one-trick
This
pony.
guy is great. He does
and
accents.
do anything. But when people ask me like, how did you get into radio? Because your journey into radio.
Well, I went
was
to
a long
radio
time.
school.
You went to
and-
radio school, but you listened and then you did overnights. I mean, you put in all this time, and then you got to that coveted morning show, which is the thing that stations want to hang their hat on. That should be your best show, is your morning show. And I literally get a call one day being like, "Hey, would you want to be on the show?" I guess I don't have anything else going on, and the rest is history.
But that's the problem. It's a quick ride, and sometimes when you get to the morning show status, you feel like, I've reached the pinnacle here. What's going to happen now? Because I started doing overnights, and very quickly on the Fox, I moved from overnights to doing the evening and then into the afternoon. And then next thing, they asked me to come over to Q and do the morning show with Jim Daniels. I thought, good Lord, I don't have any experience on mornings. I'd listen to a lot of mornings. But then that's all I've really worked ever since, is pretty much just doing that morning slot.
Scotch, can you do me a favor really
Yeah.
quick? Can you do like your best morning show radio host laugh?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so today in the news, there's a prisoner who was at a jail and he electrocuted himself when he dropped his iPad into the toilet.
Yeah, boing. I used to hate that. I loved the Bob and Tom show, but we got taken off the air many times because of the Bob and Tom show. Like, we'll pull Scotch and Dewey off and put Bob and Tom on. And then later, it was like Mike Waters and I were doing a show, and then they decided to put Bob and Tom on and again. And every time they would come back, they'd still be doing like the same bits they had been doing 2 years ago. And then they stretched the laugh, like Tom especially will like, like this long laugh that he's not really laughing. It's like nobody laughs that long.
But they have a package, and they know that the breaks need to be X amount of time long,
And
so
that's
you
what
got
they
to
do.
stretch it.
I've been in radio studios like for interviews for morning shows before, and there's nothing as disconcerting as seeing a radio host do the radio laugh, but with no joy on
No
their
expression
face.
in the face
like
at all.
They should just press a button that does it for them, so they can just look at you and you see how. Yeah, I'm gonna stop.
I've learned that like morning radio is what you make it, right? So there are days when you're just not feeling it, and everyone sits and looks at Facebook in between breaks, and then all of a sudden it's, all right, here we go. Can you guys believe what they're doing in California right now?
You guys. You got to have the girl that says, you guys, and you got to have the goofball that's got the funny line for the out every time, and then you got to have the one alpha douchebag who's like the main guy who runs the show, who's wearing his Affliction shirt, and you've probably seen their billboards around town.
Yep.
That's what we just got asked to take pictures again for the station, and Britta and I were told, try to, don't be too goofy, though. Try and look kind of cool, like when you can be kind of crouching down, and Britta says, I don't crouch down in pictures.
Yeah.
Do you
And
have
I
any
said,
Ed
I'm not
Hardy
going to wear
shirts?
any Doc Martens or Affliction shirts. No Ed Hardy shirts.
Yeah,
He's showing off my tattoo and looking badass.
Scotch told me something right off the bat too. He goes, Don't make any enemies, because you're going to end up working with people, even if you don't think they're on this station, I'm on this station. At some point, you're going to work together. That's the nature of radio. People trade stations, they trade personalities. And it's true. There have been some people that I just don't care for that have ended up walking through the front door and having an office just down the hall from me. And I think, I'm glad I didn't tell that person that they stink like old tomatoes.
Yep. Because that's the person you might end up doing a show with years from now, or they want to pair you up with.
Okay, so we've had it. Oh, and trigger warning. Interestingly enough, one of my favorite things to do is to tell Scotch, this is what I want, and to see him go into a recording studio and bob out 5 minutes later with exactly what I'm looking for.
It's just finding the sound effects. And
you're so good at it, too. I mean, this is not all just going to be brushing your ego, by the way. I'm going to tear you down at some point, I'm sure.
But when you're trying to be creative and you don't have anything to work with, you figure out a way to make it work. Because when I was younger and it was just me and a buddy in my bedroom playing with a tape recorder, we would have 2 or 3 boom boxes going so you could have some street sounds in the background, and somebody be over here shutting the door, and you'd want to get all the sound effects so it would sound like a studio mix. And then once I started working at the station and realized, look at this, I got carts, I got reel to reel. It was so easy, but nobody else was doing it. If you have all that stuff at your disposal, why not use it?
And there's a laziness, I think, that's been bred out of the convenience of computers too, where people will throw in stuff without thinking, does this sound effect actually match what I'm trying to do? There's nothing worse to me than hearing a local commercial where somebody who owns the business also wants to do the commercial, and they just do that like, everyone knows that March is the month for getting your grain bin. And
usually they don't want to do it. It's the salesperson has convinced them, we think it would be great if you did your own spot, because they figure if they stroke their ego a little bit that they'll be excited to come in and be on the air.
It's just the worst.
Because everybody's they want their friends to tell them, hey, we heard you on the radio.
Scotch is the guy in the building, too, who they grab. They're like, if you need a monster truck like the monster truck commercial voice, they're like, Scotch is the one in the building who does that. And
This Sunday.
Yeah.
And put all the reverb on it. You'll have to pay for the whole seat, but you'll only need the edge.
You've won a bunch of Addies over the years too. You've
That's
done a
what
bunch of stuff.
We used to bother submitting them. Like now, we don't even hardly ever save them. But it used to be anytime you had a really good ad, you'd set that one aside, and then at the end of the year, they'd have the call for Addies, and you'd submit them all. Yeah, there was a couple of years where I'd end up getting like 4 of them. In like a given year, and now I don't know. It just feels kind of hollow. It just even bothered submitting them.
I hosted the Addies this year, and it was 28 pages of dialogue to read. And by the end of it, I just thought, well, this is why nobody does this more than once.
I remember Dewey and I got asked to host the Teddy Awards one year.
Oh, yeah?
And we thought, well, let's make this kind of fun. We'll kind of go up and we'll pre-write a few things. And boy, that was not what... That was not what we were looking for. They just wanted us to get up there, get the people on and off. Because we came up and we did a whole thing. Hey, we're excited to be here for the 32nd Annual Titty Awards. And I reached and I put my glasses on and read, Teddy Awards. We're expecting laughter, and there's just that, the rumpled paper and the little uncomfortable coughs. And, trash the rest of these
2 in the
jokes.
afternoon on a Sunday or something.
Yep.
I did a routine where I was like, and if anyone won an award but they don't really want it, I'm more than happy to take it. I brought this electrical tape and I'll just write my name on it. Cricket, 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 cricket. And then I thought, well, it's going to be a long 2.5 hours.
Because
for
it's
me.
all
And now the
radio
award
people.
for best vector file
Oh, yeah.
for a healthcare company.
They're like a Gold Addy Award in under the category of brochure, single page leaflet self-promotion done by a student goes to Martha Graham for Bagels and Boats, done for Bismarck State College, made by Martha Graham. Photo credits to this. And then literally go in the subject of brochure, single page leaflet, a Silver Addy Award goes to Marsha Graham for Boats Over. And it's just it takes so long. And what I think is the worst is people are excited to get an award. I remember there were some groups who had never won an award. They're new companies, so it's new and exciting to them. But they have to figure out a way to kind of
Well, and here's the
shore it up a
problem.
little
Oh
bit.
no, and here's where I'm filing an event, I guess. But
Do it.
Okay, so every time that there would be an award for one of those agencies that say they think outside of the box, they would have, and then here's all of the commercials, and every commercial would be for a bank, and it would be like a pan across a field, and then the words superimposed over integrity or whatever. Like all the ads are exactly the same, but all those places in town will tell you, well, this is a company that really likes to think outside of the box, and we're looking for something new. But I'll tell you what, when I was unemployed and I applied at those places, they weren't looking for anything outside of the box because they certainly weren't looking for me.
Amen, brother,
Oh,
right?
boy. But you don't know how to work this program, they would tell me. And I thought, I don't know how to work that program, but I can bring a lot of creativity. No, we really need somebody who knows how to use this program. All right, fuck you.
Yeah, God forbid somebody learns how to do something while they're, at a workplace. I find more often than not that businesses just really they don't care about making their employees better nowadays.
It's like these businesses are looking to make a profit.
Yeah.
It's like they're looking to survive. I get it.
I wonder, though, too, specifically with advertising. I mean, that's one of those industries that I guess any media production industry, for the most part, gets disrupted fairly regularly by technology, by trends. So, yeah, I worked in advertising for a couple of years with great company, great people, but you realize that...
Is that their slogan that they gave themselves?
No,
Great company, great people.
That's how I feel about them. They were awesome, but every time a client wanted a video, it was the sort of, I don't know what you'd call it, industry aspirational. So it's like, here at XYZ Corporation, we're about families and integrity, but we're thinking outside the box. And at any broad look at it, you could see that these videos were effectively empty in content, and that's across the industry. And that's because marketing is not about substance; it's about triggering a decision in the customer. And if your customer is a business that wants to feel really good about themselves, well, that's
You gotta
easy.
push those buttons.
You need some footage of people in different cultures because they're across the world, and you need music that ramps up in a certain way. But they're all saying essentially the same thing, which is nothing. And
Right.
that's really too bad.
And at the same time, I can tell you, I've got a brother-in-law who's a very talented video production guy. He works for the Ann Carlson School and works for Apple now. But he and also this other girl we know who works productions both worked for companies in town here where they were told, okay, go out and do this commercial for a client. They went out, did the commercial, did all the bells and whistles, made it look great, and then we're told, what are you doing? You can't make it look that good. They essentially said, don't make it look that good or they're going to expect this all the time. My brother-in-law said, well, why shouldn't they? We can deliver it. Oh, I know, but they're gonna want us to do this all the time now.
When we fire you and bring on a bunch of interns, how are they going to duplicate this?
He couldn't believe his ears. Like, why wouldn't you want to do the best thing you could for them? Well, no, we can just do this and get by with this.
Tucker and I have a mutual friend who is in the creative part of writing commercials and stuff like that, the content creator. And he said there's nothing worse than having a company come in and tell you, you guys, we're looking for something different. We want to have something that's unique and fun and blah, blah, blah. This is how we're feeling. And so you write that ad for them that meets exactly their qualifications. They're like, and then really what they want to say that, but what they really want is the pan of the bank and the logo that comes in slowly, and that's what they want. So
and
they
the problem is
say
they'll decide by committee too, because they'll have everybody at their business take a look at it. Well, Jan in accounting thought you should do this, and we thought you should do this. So all of a sudden, it's watered down into just this bland commercial.
Yeah, or I've had it happen a few times too, where the client will come in and they have a very specific idea because they've seen a commercial on TV, and they go, "I want this commercial, but for me." And it's like, that commercial has nothing to do with you. Like that, it doesn't sell, but the client goes, "No, I liked it, so I want that." So I've worked on a few projects like that where you're effectively just copying a national ad, but making a localized version of it because that's what the client wants.
Right.
It's usually that, or think outside the box, but don't think outside the box.
So when you're working for a company and you're creative, you just kind of have to do what the company wants. And I found that in radio. When they ask for an ad a certain way, even if you don't like doing it, you just do it. But when you're doing it on your own, you can kind of make those decisions. For me, drawing logos for people or drawing caricatures, when they come to me and say, "Oh, could you do this?" I know if I can do it or if I don't want to do it, and I'll just turn it down outright. But I know if I can give them a really good caricature or something that's really cartoony, that's what I deliver, because that's what I can do best.
When I think of local ads that have stood the test of time, they're the ones who said, well, we want to make something. And some of them are well known because they're so bad. You take like the Smokies ads from, the mid and early 90s. Those are so bad that they're good, and people still talk about them today. In fact, okay, so if I had to go down the list, there's the
Bailiff, bring me my
shirt and my pants too, where he's the judge. There's the one where he's it's all shot outside, and he's got a red face because it's the middle of winter, and he's pitchforking manure, and two guys from the IRS come up, and the commercial ends perfectly because he goes, "Am I okay?" And then these two guys turn around and goes, "We will get you," and
You will
No,
pay.
you will
you
pay.
will pay. And he goes, "Well, I
Rather
thought so."
Do you remember what the very first one was? It was the classroom.
No,
That was where they established that he would always have buxom, attractive women.
It's a bunch
with
of
him.
Yeah.
girls, and they throw apples at him.
Yeah, and then he runs. That was the first time I ever, as a kid, recognized a continuity error because he runs behind the desk really slow because he's old, and then when he pops back up, his tie is now around his neck, and that's when he goes, "And that's the truth."
That Smokies brings back the good old days.
the
Poopsie.
yeah,
the one on the island.
that was obviously shot out at Oxbow.
There's the therapist who stops
yeah.
giving him therapy because he's having problems with Smokies because it's so delicious, and then she gets hungry. The
the
best
one
part of
where-
that, he goes, "Well, what about me?" And she goes, "Who cares?" But they didn't edit it tight enough, so you see her look off towards like the director right at the end.
And then
Who
there's
cares?
the one where Obed is dressed like a questionable native, like with a grass skirt and everything, and I believe he's in blackface.
Really?
Yeah, kind of doing a whole ooga booga thing.
Oh my, really?
That might have been one of the last ones they did.
Art Crumb would love that one.
Probably.
There was an ad that
Here's the question, though. Those are all
Yeah.
very memorable, but did they ever make you want to go buy a steak?
Oh,
at
I went to
Smokies?
Smokies
I went
because of
once.
it. Yeah.
Did
I went once.
Just out of curiosity.
And when they had like the cups ready for you, like upside down in front of where you're gonna sit, and I picked it up and I looked in it, and there was moldy bread sitting inside the cup. Just like someone just decided to shove their bread in there, and no one had touched the cup for days, enough time for it to get moldy and green inside of it.
I'd eaten there, never really had a bad experience, but my buddy Crummy told me one time that he went and the bread was a little stale or whatever. So they had just asked the waitress and said, "Can we just get another loaf of bread? This one was kind of stale." And so she went and got Obed instead of just getting them another thing of bread. "What's the problem over here?" And they said, "Well, this bread." He kind of stuck his finger into it. He's like, "Well, that's all right. That's perfectly good bread." We're not going to eat it now that you stuck your finger in it.
Oh, that is delightful. But see, okay, so that's the thing, though.
That Vyvota Carpet Girl commercials, those were great.
Was it why Vyvota?
I was in a couple
wasn't that
Laney's commercials as a kid.
Were you?
Yeah, because my stepmom was friends with I can't remember her name, but she was in charge of the marketing for Laney's, and so I was kid sitting at table doing homework, and I was kid helping his dad rake the lawn. For
Very nice.
828 at a regular rate.
Did they put everything like in fast motion? Because I've noticed that that's how Laney's commercials are now. Where they
That
put
was not
everything
this,
like
yeah.
in a fast
They
forward
hadn't adopted that style yet.
to make them show how fast and efficient their service really is.
Yeah, those
which is-
commercials are fun.
Yeah, that's not how their service really is in real life, though. Unfortunately,
But nobody wants to make
Well,
that.
great. We just lost that Laney sponsorship deal I was working
it's all right.
on.
We're going with Robert Gibbons Sons anyway.
But nobody wants to make a purposely bad commercial anymore. Those are great because of the kitschy value. If you can't really set out to make a commercial like that just happens by accident.
And if you do it on purpose, then you're going to be accused of being a Tim and Eric ripoff,
Right.
more than likely. Because those guys have really cornered the market of recreating that public access, low budget, low tech, low experience.
Stop framing at just the right bad moment where an eye is half closed, and yeah, that's so good.
Do you guys remember this is gonna be a deep dive right here? There was a commercial that the city of Fargo had made in 94, 95, and it was a guy, and he had a microphone for a television station that didn't exist. I think it was called like Fargo TV. And there's two trash cans, and he gets up close to the trash cans like he's doing an expose, and he's kind of talking in a whisper. He goes, "Hey, everyone, just so you know, starting on March 8th, you're going to pay per garbage can that you have out there. These are the Johnsons. Normally, they only put out one garbage can, so they get this rate. But this week, they put out two, so they'd be paying this rate." And he like starts peeling through. He's like, "Look at all this needless space. We could put this all in one can, save some money." And he goes, "But listen, don't tell the Johnsons, okay?" And
I don't remember that.
I don't remember that at all.
It is vivid, like in the front of my mind, and so much so that I think about that every time I put my garbage out.
That really made an impact
Thank
on
God
you.
we only have the one can system now in Fargo.
Yeah, whenever I'm shopping for carpet, I'm looking over my shoulder for large anthropomorphic frogs. Like, constantly. It's just,
Frightening.
I don't know what they feed those things, but
Yeah, it's intense. You've
who is
done
the
some,
paid too much guy? You pay too much.
Vanchi Jewelry.
Just talked about
Yeah, we were just talking about him with a client the other day, a local jeweler, and I said, "Are you you want to do something like those Vanchi?"
That's what that was.
We found one of those on line the other day. I was looking on YouTube, and if you buy your jewelry or furs anyplace else, you pay too much.
Then there's the Paradiso guide, chips are free dinner extra.
Right. See, we've got a few memorable spots.
I've wanted to track him down for the longest time. He's someone I want to have on the podcast.
Well, I mean, does he still work at that jail?
I thought that was an urban legend. I didn't know if that was
Oh, I thought that was true.
real or not.
I
I didn't
ran
know if
into
he was a local guy
one of
or
the
not.
Kroll's ladies like years ago. She was at a convenience store, and my morning show partner at the time asked her, "Hey, any good specials going on over at Kroll's?" And she looked at us and said, "I don't eat there."
One of them was a substitute teacher, and so I remember in 7th grade, someone coming over there like, "Gigi, you're never gonna believe who's in charge of math today. One of the Kroll's ladies." And I hurried to math that day because I was like, "Oh my God, it is!" And she would start the class with like, "Everyone sit down." And then I was like, "Say and eat, say and eat,"
Und.
and then she wouldn't say it. She wouldn't finish the phrase. But you knew every kid in there were like, come on, please.
Come on, don't tease.
Yeah.
Give it to me.
Now those are the real heroes of of childhood. Are the people who are in local commercials that
That's
you
why it was
enjoyed.
so exciting when I first met Mad Frank and meeting Dell and meeting Icky Bod, those guys. It's like, wow, I remember seeing those guys on local TV. That's why Jill is so excited to meet me.
Yeah, it was. She still is. She's still flabbergasted from time to time.
There's always the thrill of running into a newscaster as well back in the day. It's not as much these days because I think newscasters don't have as big of a presence, especially for younger people who aren't tuning into local news that much.
We don't have a Marv Bossert
No.
anymore. We don't have someone that you think is, the Walter Cronkite of the area who you respect in broadcast news like that.
That's you, JJ.
One of the biggest thrills for me when we started doing the show, just Dewey and I, Scotch and Dewey on Q98, was they added Kirsten Keeley to our show for a short period of time. And and she was so much fun to work with, but I was like really intimidated before she came in to do the show. And that day I'd even kind of like cleaned up and made sure my hair looked good and everything. And then she shows up and she had a baseball cap on and a sweatshirt. And she's like, gosh, you guys really dress up nice for doing the show at this hour. And I said, well, I kind of dressed up for you, you know. But she was so much fun and so down to earth. But then I think DAY decided it was kind of beneath her stature to be doing a morning show with us.
You've got a great story about Rob Kupek, too.
Well, you know, and I wish I would have. I still haven't never touched base with him, but Rob Kupek, we used to joke around our television at home. Whenever he would come on, his voice, it was just the right pitch where it would make our television buzz. So let's go and check over with Rob Kupek, and he'd and our TV would kind of buzz because of this intonation in his voice. So we would joke around on the air and say, "Oh, and we've got Rob Kupek," and I'd take a kazoo out and go. So he heard about it and apparently had called and left a message on my voicemail at work that was like, "Hey, Scotch, I heard you wanted to have me come in and play kazoo. I just thought I'd let you know I'm willing to come in if you want me to come in and do that sometime." And, you know, it must have been months later that I found the message, and I thought, God, that would have been so good to have him in.
We can still make that happen for you, Scott.
Really?
We can still make that happen, for sure.
Because I got nothing but respect for Rob Kupek, but we did
Great guy,
roast him pretty mercilessly.
I feel like he's a guy who can take a good joke.
I think so,
there are
too.
people who can take a good joke, and there are people who can't. Somebody who's not so great about taking a joke is Mr. Steve Poitras.
What?
Steve-O.
Yep. And
Poitras.
My start in radio was on KNDS with Tucker, and Tucker had several shows. One of them we hosted together. One of them I just got to be a frequent guest on.
So you're talking about the United Nations Musical Comedy Hour.
Yeah. And what was that the first one?
That was the first one. The second one was Radio Saga, which was mostly old radio plays that we would play instead of music, but we would still talk. But yeah, the first show is the United Nations Musical Comedy Hour.
We wrote these fake news stories.
Like old National Lampoon's Lemmings or National Lampoon Radio Hours, and this sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh, and some of the shows were like looking back on it.
I guess.
It was
was awful.
What's that game where you had to get people to guess something and then you like hit the top and you like outburst or something?
Yeah.
There were whole episodes where it's just people in the studio playing outburst,
or me trying to get my friends to not swear because it is local like broadcast radio.
But we did these fake Onion-like news stories, and so Steve came in and recorded them because he had a nice news voice. And
I knew Steve doing like theater and stuff in town, so we were already pretty good friends.
And it was stuff like the title of one of them was "Cowboy Hat Used for Non-Cow Wrangling Purposes."
Area Homeless Abused Taco Bar.
Yeah,
that was a
very
good one too.
Onion-like.
Yeah. And so not only had he done this for us, but then Tucker cast both of us in a movie where we played U.S. presidents called Mercedes Ray. And then I saw him a year later when I was running for mayor, and I was like, "Hey, Steve, how's it going?" He goes, yeah, and you, who are you?
Remember you?
And I wanted to be like, "Oh, this must be the dementia setting in then, eh, Steve, you old bastard." And then at one point, I started becoming a little more well-known, and then he knew who I was all the time. But so Steve Poitras can't really take the joke, I think, as everyone else can, because it just and he's a great guy, don't get me wrong, he's a great guy, but even like when you guys had Steve Poitras Day on the radio, I don't think he really got the joke.
That was so much fun. He was pretty excited that we were doing it though, because he'd never had anybody do that before.
And what was it?
On Valley News Live, they would do the cut-ins. Isn't that what the morning show? Valley News Live, and then they would check in with Steve Poitras, and it was usually him at some local office or some local business where they would just here we are, and they'd meet everybody there in the office. And so when he came in, we were all wearing we had like those suits from Dumb and Dumber, and with top hats, and we had big signs. We had our Rock 102 girls holding these big signs that said Steve Poitras Day, and we had balloons in the studio. So every time they would cut to us, it was like I don't know if you've ever seen those little intros on that Lloyd Kaufman will do for like all the trauma movies. There's always like a ton of people in the background, woo, just dancing around like there's some party going on, even though there's no party going on, obviously. So every time they would cut to us, it looked like there was this huge party going on in the studio, and I had my acoustic guitar, and we played like a Steve Poitras song live. It was so great. But yeah, I don't know if he quite got all the nuances of the joke, but it was a good bit. I still got that saved.
It's all right. He's again one of those people who I
he had a great mustache back in the day too.
Oh yeah,
he was Anchorman back in the day.
There's So thanks to YouTube, there's a great clip from when Charlie Johnson was leaving one of the radio stations, and Steve does this and of course we've just announced that Charlie Johnson will be retiring, and he's been here for a lot of years, and we're definitely going to miss him. Announcing today, Charlie Johnson is retiring, effective immediately. And then they go to a commercial, and the producer must have been like, "You didn't make a big enough deal about that. This is a big deal." And so it comes back and goes, "And before we went to commercial, we announced that Charlie Johnson, of course, has been here for many, many years, a well-respected broadcaster, retiring now. And
Just milking it and dragging it out.
just stretching, and that mustache of his is dancing like a caterpillar in the sun on his upper lip. So now that you're a part of the fame cycle of Fargo Moorhead, you get I've been out with you. You get recognized all the time, and partially it's because you haven't changed your hair. I think
That's all. That's what it is.
For
if I
many,
didn't have
many
the hair,
years.
nobody would know who I was.
We we do a thing at the studio where we have a Christmas party where the general public gets to walk through, and they're going down to the big AM station, but they walk by all the other stations. And there is a woman who was positive that Rod Stewart was in the studio.
I love Rod Stewart. And then I had to go out in the hallway, and she had to tell me how much she loves Rod Stewart. And I'm sure she knew I wasn't Rod Stewart, but she must have felt some connection with me because of the Rod Stewart hair.
Well, and she obviously doesn't love Rod Stewart enough to know that he changed his hairstyle after 1988, and he no longer looks like the Rod Stewart that you love, ma'am. But what are you gonna do? It's the way it is. So when
It's
people
not like you're not part of the local. You still get recognized as the Bell Bank guy, though, don't you?
all the time, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact,
Hey, that's the guy from the Bell Bank commercials. And how many years ago was that?
it was many, many years ago.
Right.
But I only got recognized by old women who wanted me to meet their granddaughter. That's who, and they would hold on to me for support so they wouldn't fall over. So it was less that I was famous and more like they couldn't get over to the canned food aisle to get a grip. I will say this though, that one thing that I really respect about what you do, Scotch, is if you say you're going to do something, you're going to do it, which I think is pretty amazing. You create and it happens there. But what have you wanted to do that you haven't done yet?
I don't know. Actually, if I think of it, I kind of try and tackle it. So whatever I'm going to do next, I haven't attempted yet.
So you're playing music again.
Oh, there you
yeah.
go. See, that's why I brought her.
There you go.
Well, my friend Pooey and I, we used to play in Punky Boobster together. We've played in a lot of bands together over
That's
the years.
such a great name.
Yeah, thank
That's
you.
a fantastic name.
Yeah, we had a band in the early 90s that was called Punky Boobster, and we played around Fargo and played at First Avenue and played Ralph's and Kirby's and all those places. And this last summer, we just did a reunion where we actually got together and played at the now defunct, what's the name of that bar? Jerry's, which was a great music club, and then it just folded. But that got us to thinking that we should keep making some music, and we went and saw our friends, the Brothers Bertrand, play, and they're doing an acoustic duo. So Pooey and I thought, let's start doing an acoustic duo. So we just opened for them at the Spirits Lounge, and now we got a show coming up April 7th over at the Front Street Tap Room. For anybody who wants to write that on their calendars.
We'll get this out before April 7th.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, and we're doing all the trappings of a two-man show. We got a little shtick in between. We're doing a lot of funny songs. I just bought a harmonica, so I can play harmonica and guitar now, like that talentless hack Bob Dylan. And it's going to be quite a show.
Then we're selling buttons and
Yep.
maybe T-shirts.
Bought a
and-
button-making device, and God, people love buttons.
Who inspired you to buy a button device?
JJ did. JJ ordered a button maker from, was it China?
From China, and waited 9 months and it never arrived.
And
so
I kept
just ordered
asking,
another
how's
one.
that button maker coming along?
I
got it yet.
sometimes I hate buying stuff off of the internet because I never know if it's really going to get here or if I just paid someone to take my money.
Right. Well, I was very impressed with your button maker. And then when we were doing Art Riot, this gal in town, Christine Wallen, she also was making little crafts and buttons and stuff. And I asked her where she got hers because she made some really sweet Art Riot buttons. And she told me this U.S., what do they call it?
American button maker.
Thank you. American button making. So we bought a really nice button maker, and we've been making
Thanks for
buttons
keeping it in the U.S., by the way. We really need those dollars.
Yeah, we've
So
been
we
losing that button money to Mexico.
art ride.
Hopefully that wall will
buttons.
go up and our buttons will stay in this country.
Scotch and Pooey buttons, and last time we gigged, we made as much selling buttons as we actually got paid for doing the gig. You know,
there you go.
So, and now we're making buttons for the North Dakota Apartment Wrestling Federation.
So you're telling us that JJ Meets World needs to get into the button racket.
Yeah, absolutely.
We decided
It's cheap merch. You can make money on it.
we decided that anything that's going to be JJ Meets World branded merchandise will not only include a picture of my face, but I'll be wearing some kind of hat. So I'll be wearing a sailor's hat.
We had
or-
a long, this is like an hour at Applebee's discussion. We're not set on which hat it's going to be yet.
So that's a signature of the show, then.
is the hat.
The hat.
Like,
We each have veto power over the other, so
do you guys remember when Dayton's had Santa bears? And every year you'd collect a
Yeah.
Santa bear. Yeah, that's what I want with these buttons. I want to be like, oh yeah, well I was at this underground show and I got him wearing a little kid's fireman's helmet, and be like, oh, I don't have that one. I want to be the Beanie Baby of the podcast world, a false economy that I control. It's Bitcoin. I want to create Bitcoin for buttons.
Well, let us be your provider.
We're your wholesaler.
We can get them free cheap.
JJ
Oh, that's where
coin.
it's
Yeah,
at.
I would invest in JJ coin.
I just saw that Kodak launched its own cryptocurrency because I guess people aren't taking photos the old-fashioned way, so we got to do something to
really
stay
got to
relevant.
blockchain into that.
Yeah.
Well, and with
Kodak?
Cosby as your spokesman.
Oh,
That's
there
true.
you go.
Kodak's making a comeback, though. Film is coming back, just like vinyl is coming back. There's people that want to shoot on film now. So I mean, they've reintroduced Polaroid film. There's people that are buying that. God knows why, but
So maybe Cosby is on his way back.
So
yeah, right.
Cosby's one of the first people accused of, decades of cover-ups for, sexual assaults on women.
The grabbing and the squeezing.
And Scotch used to do. Bill Cosby used to call into our show all the time, and there was one bit that I just loved where Cosby was talking about needing pudding, and what was he gonna? What was it?
putting my hands all over your boobies.
And
Groping and all.
I remember reading that, and every morning was tons of fun. And just recently, I was kicked out of the office that Scotch, Britta, and I shared, and moved across the hall, and I don't
Bird's
have
nest.
nearly as much fun.
The bird's nest is a little empty without you.
Home of the Pigeon Boys. So, Scotch, thank you very much for being on the show. Tanya, thank you for making sure that he got here, because that's sort of your role. You get to be the person to make sure that he's
I handle
contained.
all the details.
Good for you. And you balance the checkbook, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
And I got your email, and I was going to bring local underground artist Bagface in with me, but he got a little tipsy last night and wasn't able to make it in. But maybe he can come on a future show.
I
And
would
isn't
love
he
that.
busy dog sitting, a high maintenance dog?
That's right.
Yeah.
He's babysitting a dog that has to wear diapers.
That is a story for
Changing
the
dog
another
diapers. That
podcast.
is for another podcast, indeed.
Again, if they want to find you, what's the website they should go check out your
Okay,
stuff?
you can go to goofroof.com. It's GOOFROOF.com, and you can find things I'm working on there, or you can find me on Facebook, Noel Scotch Anderson on Facebook.
Well, that's
Or look
great.
for the North Dakota Apartment Wrestling Federation on Facebook, and get your copies at the next Valkyries of the Valley show.
Go to any comic convention and don't just ask Scotch to sign stuff. Buy his stuff, and then he'll sign it for you. Because this is America, Jack.
Nobody's getting it for free, baby.
Exactly. We didn't import these cheap buttons from across the border. These are real buttons. And
Made
so
in
we
the
got
goddamn USA.
thanks, guys.
Thanks for having me in.
That's going to wrap it up for today's show. For more info, including how you can help us keep the lights on by donating to our Patreon, visit our website, www.jjmeetsworld.com, or you can hit us up on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and all the sites that you fancy kids are using these days. If you'd like to stay up to date on new episodes of JJ Meets World, don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, or wherever you consume the podcast that you love. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by checking out www.moonbasemaria.com. And folks, just remember, this is the time when you do what you want to do. Play another episode of JJ Meets World.